I really wish my glasses were more resilient. All right, I'm at home, about to film. The sunset is gorgeous. Very good. My phone just lit off. So hard. Holy shit. I wanted to talk a little bit more about, the similarities between robustness and resilience, which is really interesting. Because I think there's a really interesting distinction between the two, right? Robustness theory kind of tells you like how well can an existing system survive in the face of both internal failures and external attacks. So like a more static way of like thinking about what like the health of a system in the face of failure. And there's also the traditional definition of resilience as well, which I think is a slightly more dynamic one in the sense that the resilience of a system depends on its ability to adapt dynamically to incoming and new threats as well. And I think my theory here is that, I don't think it's mutually exclusive, right? And I think robustness is very similar to kind of the study of how do we make stuff resilient to outside change. But at the same time, resilience is about acknowledging the fact that yes, the outside is changing. How do you ensure that your system continues to work? My theory here is that I think to be an effective system designer, you need to understand how both robustness and resilience kind of play hand in hand. And because you talked about resilience in your last video, I'm going to spend this video talking about robustness. Yeah, I think thinking about robust networks is especially relevant to infrastructure stuff because let's do a brand, infrastructure changes slowly. By nature, it's good for analyzing those types of slow-moving systems. And I think thinking about it in terms of systems, it's like how do we make sure that our infrastructure, which changes slowly, can still survive and thrive in the face of internal failures and external attacks. And I think there's a really big distinction between like randomized internal failures and targeted external attacks. And in network theory, this is also the case as well. Okay, I got halfway through explaining it and then I realized I should probably explain network types. So this is a network theory 101 course now. Okay, so number one is you have random networks, right? So any type of network where the nodes are randomly connected. So mathematically, the definition is like the distribution of the degrees of connection between the nodes follows a sort of like Poisson distribution. The second type of network is a scale-free network. A scale-free network is one that you can kind of think about it as a network where the degree of connections between nodes follows a sort of power law, where it kind of curves like this. Actually, I'll probably just like put the distribution shape up on the screen right here. So for example, the web has the case where about 80% of the links come from 20% of the pages. That's kind of where the whole like 80-20 rule comes from. The kind of main difference here is that these scale-free networks have this really long tail of nodes where a really small number of nodes have a really, really large number of links. Google, for example, has a shit ton of links, right? Once these kind of hubs are present, they change how we think about the networks in terms of how well we can, how central they are to kind of the functioning of the network. And if you think about this, when you analogize it to fault tolerance, it's actually really interesting. Because designing a network to be kind of resistant to simultaneously to both internal random failures and external targeted attacks is that actually both of these networks are good against defending against the opposite thing, right? If you think about like a more scale-free network, you have a lot of hubs. It's actually very resilient to random attacks because effectively only the failure of the central node can break down the entire components of the graph into isolated components. So it's very unlikely that a single attack will kind of fragment the whole network. You would have to take down, right, that effectively cut off that long tail distribution of really big hub nodes. Whereas in random networks, because they lack hubs, it's actually very likely that a random attack could just take out a single node that is connecting to parts of the graph together. And in fact, because it's a random network, the difference between a targeted attack and random removal isn't that big after all. They're both kind of equally bad for a random network. And again, the reason why we think a lot about this failure theory when it comes to networks is because of cascading failures. Any sort of system that kind of displays cascading failures, faults, has like three main key characteristics. One is that the system is composed of some sort of like flow over the network, whether that be like electricity or flow of information. And two, each local graph component has some threshold at which it breaks down. It has some maximum load capacity. And if that maximum load capacity is exceeded, then the node fails. And third, each node has the ability to kind of shed load or redistribute some of its load to its peers. And these three characteristics kind of make up a lot of what we consider these distributed systems, right? So yeah, this entire like network theory stuff is really interesting. I remember having a big kick about reading it a while back. I'm very rapidly approaching 4 minutes, so I'm gonna cut it there. But I hope this is fun to listen to. So yeah, lecture series. Yes, I'm gonna go look at the sunset. I've been recording for so long, I've almost missed the sunset, but that is gorgeous.